Yeah, my name's Lorna Goulden, and I'm a director of Creative Innovation Works, a local company. And I'm also a founding member with Iskander of the Internet of People. This is a global consultancy, and we're bringing together designers and business developers and also technology expertise. And we have a vision. We want to make the Internet of Things happen, but we want to make it happen in what we call a relevant and meaningful way. And in essence, that's what my presentation today is about, the Internet of Things, but also it's the role of designers in actually making it happen. Now, I'm going on the assumption that everybody here, the majority of people here are designers, but I just want to check. If we've got people who are not designers, if we've got researchers here, business developers, programmers, wow, quite a few actually, great. Do we have any students here? Just out of interest. Great. Not so many students, but so what is the Internet of Things? The first two presentations I think have already given a little bit of a glimpse, and I'm actually assuming that most people will really have a sense or an idea of the Internet of Things. But I was talking to someone earlier, and they were saying about when you try and explain it to clients, they kind of don't really quite get it. So what I'd like to do today is give a little bit of presentation to maybe help with that communication, give some examples. Okay. But in short, very simplistically, and I think the presentations that have already given insight into this, we're talking about a shift, a massive shift in internet. It's happening right now. From connectivity, anytime, any place, anyone. We've seen the presentation about that. We're now introducing anything. Objects are connected to the internet, and they're connected to each other. But one of the questions that I've been asking myself, and I'm asking other people for many years actually now, is, well, okay, what exactly is the Internet of Things, and when is it actually going to happen? And what I'm going to do today is show you a little bit of insight into how some companies are actually actively developing the Internet of Things, and I'm also going to show a few examples of how people are creating the Internet of Things. And what I hope to do today is to at least bring a little bit of food for thought for you and your work. I'm hoping also to inspire maybe some of you to actually start actively creating the Internet of Things. And for those of you who are already creating Internet of Things, I'm hoping some of the things that I'm going to show will maybe just give a bit of a fresh perspective. So why am I interested in the Internet of Things? Well, in the late 80s, I actually discovered electronics as a way of helping me to make my designs more interactive. So I'm a designer. In the early 90s, I came across RFID tags. And I'm assuming that most people will know what RFID tags is. It's the thing that's in our transport cards, the Oyster cards, the one that got cracked by the Dutch university not so long ago. These ones were actually loaned to me by Texas Instruments. They're actually quite large. This was in the early 90s. And they were originally developed for tagging cows. So I like to say that the Dutch cow is actually one of the pioneers of the Internet of Things. To put this in context, this was in 1990, so this is when Apple brought out the Classic. Now, thankfully, the world has moved on a lot since then. And the RFID, it was a technology that a few years ago was really heavily discussed as being one of the core technologies behind the Internet of Things. And for me, I found that quite amazing, because actually it's a technology that was originally developed in 1939. So it was actually used for aeroplanes to give an identification as whether they were a friend or foe. This was like 70 years, nearly 70 years that technology has been hanging around. And suddenly, a few years ago, it was like the next best thing. But it's actually now sort of dropped off the radar, excuse the pun. And we see now that there's a number of companies who are very actively developing the infrastructure that we need, they believe that we need, for the Internet of Things. So we have Intel. And as they're pointing out, we've got cars already connected. We've actually got fitness equipment connected. We've got robots. We've got logistics systems. They're already connected. So your luggage system at Schiphol is very much Internet of Things connected. According to Intel, they call actually the Internet of Things compute continuum. 31 billion things are going to be connected to the Internet in 2020. But also what they're saying is this is actually going to be changing how we live. And this is where, as a designer, I start getting very interested. IBM, they're also very active in the Internet of Things. And I think it's right, if you're interested, Google these. There's some really nice information. They've got white papers. As IBM describes it, the world has actually developed a central nervous system. What I'm going to do is show a little bit of a clip of a film they put on YouTube. I recommend having a look at the whole film, but just to give an insight into how they're viewing the Internet of Things.
Over the past century, but accelerating over the past couple of decades, we've seen the emergence of a kind of global data field. The planet itself, natural systems, human systems, physical objects, have always generated an enormous amount of data, but we didn't used to be able to hear it, to see it, to capture it. Now we can, because all of this stuff is now instrumented. And it's all interconnected, so we can actually have access to it. So, in effect, the planet has grown a central nervous system.
So there's about 1 billion people using the internet at the moment, and that's set to grow to probably 2 billion in the next couple of years. And we think that's quite a lot, but over the last 10 years I've been looking at devices being linked up together using networks, so little sensors on things, these temperature sensors and traffic sensors and flow rate of water and how much electricity, all transmitting data. It won't be long, and it may even have happened already, that there's more things on the internet than there are people on the internet. That's really what we mean by the Internet of Things. Then you get this sea of data that you just drown in, literally.
I think one of the most interesting things about this story is they're really touching on the element of data, the digital part of the Internet of Things, which actually is really crucial. Where originally attention was on the physical part, it's the combination of the physical and the digital is where it gets really important. Cisco, again, another company, they're really very active in the Internet of Things. They're focusing very much on the smart cities. They believe there's going to be 50 million things connected to the Internet in 2020. Now, if we look in history at all the predictions about technological innovations, I'm guessing there's probably going to be a lot more than that by the time we get to 2020. But as Cisco point out, the Internet of Things is really here already. Now, we've seen some examples, but one of the things that I've been most interested in, and I really feel that we want to do some more about as designers, is when is the Internet of Things really going to be coming into my life as an individual person and actually bringing meaning to it? And I'm not talking about monitoring the municipal systems. And so I actually had a look in my house, and I do actually have some Internet of Things devices. This was a nifty little energy meter. The reason I got this one was because it's simple. So although I like technology, I don't like spending too much time on it. And it actually just reads the spinning disc on the meter. But it connects up to my phone, and there's a little app so I can see the energy usage. There's also an online site, so you can actually monitor your energy use. I thought, this is great. So I wanted to take a screenshot of it just to show you how I've been using it. Unfortunately, in September, it lost connection with the internet, but it didn't actually tell me. So it wasn't smart enough to tell me, and unfortunately, I also am not smart enough to remember how I connected it in the first place. And to be honest, I couldn't be bothered to work it out again, so it's still sitting there, flashing its green light, doing nothing useful. And I look around my house, and actually, I have to be honest, I've got more of these things, because I love these things. I'll buy them, and I'll spend the time setting them up, and they always seem to lose their connection. And then I just sort of stick them in the attic or in the cupboard. And this is really one of the things that I think designers really need to start stepping up and going, look, how can we actually stop this technology being essentially something that is interesting for about maybe the first day or month, and then ends up just being actually not useful. But more importantly, for the people who are not technology abled, enabled, or even interested, how is it going to actually be relevant and interesting and useful for them, and not going to end up making them completely confused and irritated? And not end up with these technologies just in the shelf, being filed away, not being used. Or, like RFID, taking 70 years before people start noticing and they can make something with it. Up to a few years ago, I used to focus very much my presentations on the creativity aspect of design. But I've realized now, and I think also maybe a lot of you will realize, that when you're starting to develop new, more complicated systems, Internet of Things for your clients, there's actually a need not only to change the way we create, but also to change the way we think. Because actually current ways of thinking are not enabling us to really make the Internet of Things. Now, I have to admit, I'm being a little bit ambitious putting this slide up here. I am no way an expert on spiral dynamics, but I like this image as a way of illustrating what I'm trying to introduce here. Now, first of all, how many people in here in the audience are familiar with spiral dynamics? Okay. Anybody working with it at the moment? Great, because you know a lot more than I do. But I really like this as one idea, and it's not just the only one. One of the things I want to point out, it's probably a little bit too small, but what they're actually pointing out is the majority of people are thinking in a particular way. Now, our thinking patterns are very much defined by the culture, a culture that's grown out of the industrial era. Yet the people that we need to develop the Internet of Things, the thinking patterns, is actually 1.1% of the population. And I would hazard a guess, actually, that there's a large proportion of that in this room, or the potential in this room. And that thinking pattern, it's about not thinking linearly, not thinking cause and effect, but actually thinking complete systems, and also thinking holistically. And I'm going to jump away from that, because like I said, I'm not an expert in that area. But if you are interested, some links. The Hague Centre in the Netherlands, they're actually very active in developing spiral dynamics. What I really like, one of the quotes from their site, everything we need already exists. We connect it up. Now, I'm convinced that actually all the technology we need is already there. In fact, I think we could, for quite a few years, stop developing technology. We just need to start putting it together. Context Institute, another interesting organization. They're not doing spiral dynamics, but they've also hit upon the realization that we need to change, literally dramatically change the way we think. Their focus is on sustainability. And also I'd like to throw out there that designing for a sustainable future is actually a key connection with designing the Internet of Things. The two cannot really be separated. And also a local company, Summon, really interesting. They are actually applying spiral dynamics to actually enable people to envision futures, but also to experience them. And they're doing this with gaming, serious gaming. Have we got game designers in the room? No game designers. Oh, yes, we do. Hi. But I think also game design and design is an element of actually helping people to change the way they think. And so not only creating, but also thinking is the role that design can have in developing the Internet of Things. Now, it's great actually following the previous presentations, because I feel that they'd already actually said a lot of what I want to say, so I can skip through some bits. But these are the three core elements that I think are important for design when we're talking about creating the Internet of Things. Understanding people, I think that's quite straightforward from the examples we've seen. If we don't understand people, really, truly understand them, then we create things like that energy meter, like all the other things I've got to buy home that eventually just end up not being very useful. But another thing that I really, really believe in is creating experiences. I do not believe that if you're understanding people, you will end up designing to solve problems. Now, I don't mean that we don't have to solve problems with our design, but I think we need to take it one level. That problem solving should be creating a valuable, meaningful experience. One example I like to use is, if experiences were not the most valuable thing in our world, then we wouldn't have Ferraris. Which problem is that solving? Now, enabling creativity, this is the one that I want to go into a little bit more. And it's great because Iskander's already had a wonderful introduction to this. This is actually a model that was developed quite a number of years ago in a European Commission project that we did called the Disappearing Computer. And I think it's touching on an aspect that's really critical for the Internet of Things. We don't really know what the Internet of Things is going to be. It's impossible to predict. And so the strategy is to put the technology out there, put the elements, the infrastructure out there in a way that people can actually develop it. And I'm just going to now go through a number of different examples. And I'm expecting that some of them will be familiar, and I'm hoping that some of them will be less familiar. COSM. This is actually originally Patch Bay. It's an online platform where you can connect your sensors, your data. It will monitor your data. There's also a community where you can actually download information on building devices. Very closely connected to Arduino, which we saw earlier. Now, the reason I really like Arduino and COSM Patch Bay, they were developed originally by designers, interaction designers. Now, Arduino, open source hardware technology, enabled you to connect things, connect sensors, control. It was open source, which meant that it could be evolved. Then we had the LilyPad, and what I really like about this, there was a research done by MIT, and they were actually looking at what kind of people were buying and using Arduino, predominantly men. When the LilyPad was introduced, which was a different form, the number of women actually developing it increased. So changing the form of technology can actually change how it actually is viewed and appeals to people. And now it's evolved even further, so we've got the Nano, so this makes it much, much easier to connect immediately to internet. They're a lot smaller, and they connect directly to internet, and you can connect it to Twitter, Facebook, and you can start being creative about what you're going to do with it. Now, I will admit, these are rather technical solutions, and maybe a little bit off-putting, but that's why I get quite interested in this one. I think this is for the slightly less technical, if you don't want to start soldering. Then you've got the sensor tag. These will connect up to your operating system on your phone, and you can actually decide what you want to do with it. They will sense temperature, they will sense movement, and it's kind of a tool for you to be creative with. Now, obviously, one of the major open tools is, well, I call it the iPhone, but the phone, the smartphone, not wanting to offend some people in the audience. I like this app because at first glance, it's like, well, why is this useful? What it does is it actually just monitors all the places you've been to all the time. It also keeps it private, apparently. But connecting with the other device, this and other apps are the tools that are actually the basis of the quantified self. Now, we have a presentation shortly on the quantified self, so I'm not going to say too much about that. But for me, that's an example where these open tools are actually now being used by people to develop really, really relevant and meaningful solutions. One of the most exciting of those, I think, is what they call the health Internet of Things. And I saw a presentation on Monday, and there was one of the examples that really struck me of this guy who was very technically enabled, quantified self. He actually discovered 1.5 years before the doctors did that he was developing Crohn's disease. And I thought that was quite amazing. So, putting together these technologies, open tools, we have designers now that are creating things that are much more accessible maybe to the regular person. I like this one. It's an example that was actually developed on the Dragon's Den in the UK. And if you're interested, there's a site on YouTube, and I think also a Facebook page where you can express your interest and you can buy it.
The idea is to innovate the t-shirt, the original canvas of personal expression, by connecting it to the internet. It's called T-Shirt OS. The first wearable, shareable, programmable t-shirt, 100% cotton platform for digital creativity. The t-shirt has always been about leaving an impression, a creative canvas, the status update before the status update existed. The original like button. Our goal is to develop the world's first commercially available digital t-shirt, put it in your hands and over your bodies so you can go out there and leave an impression. If we can do it, would you want one? It's loaded with apps and tools. As big an LED screen as we can get. Camera, microphone, accelerometer, and sound. All controlled from a big brain in the phone, via a small brain in the t-shirt. Connect that to the internet, and we have T-Shirt OS. So let's think of some stuff to do. Start simple. Connect the t-shirt to Twitter, display tweets. Your tweets, other tweets, hashtag tweets. Fun, dangerous, potentially embarrassing. Share tracks, covers, playlists, dance to the beat. Or give your t-shirt free rein to take photos and post them straight to your Instagram feed. T-Shirt OS is a platform for you to express yourself. This is what the tech can do. The story it tells is up to you.
Now, this is just one other element as well that I think is really crucial for the Internet of Things. We've got the things, we've got the data, we've got the intelligence. We need the people. So these systems also need to be designed with people actually having an important role in them. And I don't believe in these systems actually just automating everything away from us. So also getting closer to the sort of less technological side of things. We've had a mention earlier about 3D printing. Very quickly.
And could you kind of talk
You
to
can
us
actually buy a
about
3D
bringing
printer for
3D
your
printing
home
to the
now.
consumer?
Sure. What we are doing here is we're launching a platform called Cubify.com, of which Cube is one part of the solution.
I'm going to whiz past that one. They've got a site as well where you can also, very similar to Shapeways, if you're familiar with that one, which is actually an Eindhoven-based company. They went to the direction of selling a 3D printer for the home. Shapeways, I think, has gone in a really interesting direction. I don't know if you're aware, but they just opened a future factory in New York. Last week, the first 5 machines, printers, were installed, and they're planning 50 3D printers on Long Island in New York to enable people to actually start being their own industrial developing providers. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that has an impact on the current way of producing products. So I'm getting waved at. Time to finish. That's in essence my presentation. Not enough time. There's so many things going on out there. And I'm guessing there's a lot of you out there that know a lot more than I do. Designers have a role, I think, in opening the door to the Internet of Things. And I would be very interested for people to get in touch with me if you have other thoughts, other ideas, because this is just a growing, developing area, and it's incredibly interesting. And I hope you can take part in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.